What is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Nest Podcast. This is episode number 125. I'm your host, Brandon, and I'm joined tonight by two special guests. And for those of you that are wondering why I had a little hiccup at the beginning of the show, it's because my normal co-host, Zach, is on vacation. So I hit the wrong button and played the wrong intro. So sorry about that. Whatever. I'm not used to producing and hosting at the same time. Without further ado, my first guest co-host of the evening is a man that's been on the show several times, Adam Ballesteros, formerly of the Bearded Ballesta Show. Adam, what's up, man? Thanks for coming on. How's it been? You've been a while since you've been on the show.
It's been a good bit, man. It's good to be back, though. Love coming on and talk sports with you guys.
Yeah, appreciate it. Appreciate you being here. I'm excited to get into some of the topics that we got for tonight. And then the man up in the upper right-hand corner that's a little bit dark, that's being safe as can be, driving down the highway talking to us right now. A man that has been on the show multiple times and was a full-time co-host, but had to step back and take care of some other stuff. Justin, man, what's up, man? How are things going with you?
Everything's going good, man. Everything's looking up. I hope to be back to full-time shortly. Got all my ducks in a row. I'm just trying to coast.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. We're definitely excited to have you back on here. Just, for a one-off right now until you can get everything figured out even further. But then once you're back full-time, it'll be good to go. We've had a pretty wild NFL season, and we've missed having your insight on there because we've had a lot of Falcons stuff that we've had to talk about without you, and that's kind of unfortunate. But I know both of you guys follow college football quite a bit, and you're both fans of the college, aspect of it. And last week, Zach and I were talking a little bit about the BCS selection and how it all went down. I wanted to get your opinions on that real quick before we jump into any more topics. So, Adam, what did you think about the final four that were selected in the BCS?
Well, not the BCS anymore, the College Football Playoff. No more BCS. Yeah, I know what you mean. To be honest, I mean, it's kind of expected at this point. It's another – I actually went to the office earlier, and one of our GMs had a square sheet, and one side says probably Bama, the other says probably Clemson, because it's probably what it's going to be again. It just so happens to be this is the time in college football where those two programs are the two main powerhouses. And unfortunately, until we expand the college football playoff, it's probably going to be the same format. You're always going to have a fifth or a sixth team out. I could argue that maybe A&M should be in there. But then again, if your only loss is being blown out by the number one team, then how close should the number 4 seed be to the number 1 seed at that point? And do we really need to see a rematch? But it was also early in the year. But at the same time, I mean, you know me, I come from an engineering background. I'm very analytical when I do my research and whatnot. And I miss the BCS. You don't have actual people making potentially human error suggestions or selections. And instead, if something goes like a hiccup or it's wrong, you can blame the computer.
Yeah, I agree. I actually made the case last week for A&M based off of why should Notre Dame be included in this when they just this past week before lost to Clemson. So their loss was a lot more recent, and it just served no point for them to be there other than money. Justin, what did you think about it?
Yeah, I feel that A&M played their best football after they got blown out by Alabama. I mean, who has Alabama blown out this year? I don't think they've had a really contested game all season. So, I mean, it's their championship to lose at this point. I mean, even Clemson's kind of had a down year for what Clemson normally puts out in their division. I feel like Ohio State, that whole thing was just a joke. The fact that they played half the games that these other teams played, that should count for a lot. And that wasn't, like you said, it being all a computer numbers game. The way that worked out was kind of funky to me. But I think it's Clemson, Alabama. I think the other two seeds are just kind of placeholders at this point. So I don't think it really matters anyway.
Yeah, you guys are probably right that it's going to ultimately boil down to be Alabama and Clemson. But it did kind of just rub me the wrong way that the A&M didn't get that chance to at least go out there and try. They didn't get a chance to compete. because they want, the favorites to get out there or whatever. But you guys mentioned freaking Ohio State. Have you heard the latest on Urban Meyer?
I have not.
Apparently, Urban Meyer may be headed to the NFL. He's generated quite a bit of interest from a couple NFL teams, and he's, I guess, leaning towards, maybe coming out of retirement once again, and testing the big league. Most notably, the two teams that I'm seeing after, Schefter kind of reported that he was drawing NFL attention. The two teams that I dug that, seem to have the most connections to him are the Jacksonville Jags and the Detroit Lions. Of course, the Jacksonville Jaguars still have yet to fire Doug Marrone as their head coach, so that's kind of an iffy situation there. And the Detroit Lions recently fired Matt Patricia a few weeks ago, so both of those jobs will be open at the end of the season. I don't think the Jags are going to fire their GM and then keep the former head coach. So I would say that's a pretty safe bet that that's going to be open. What do you guys think? Do you think Urban Meyer step up to the NFL and actually have a shot at this?
I think, last year we were talking about Jacksonville possibly being like a sleeper for the Super Bowl. And for them to turn around and only win, for me to turn around and only win Trenton. I'm sorry, guys. But for them to turn around and win.
If you want.
Yeah, go ahead, buddy.
Well, I was going to say, I think Urban Meyer could have success. As far as Jacksonville goes, I know you guys have been talking previously about Dabo Sweeney possibly going to Jacksonville. I think depending on who that pick is, which if it is Trevor Lawrence, I think that makes the most sense. I would personally like to see Urban Meyer go maybe to the Jets or somewhere like that and work with like a Sam Darnold or see what quarterback they potentially get. Who knows? Maybe they get like a Justin Fields kind of player over there in New York, and Urban Meyer can step in and shape his own little offense with that. But I was, I guess this is the first time I'm hearing of this, so it makes me a little sad to hear that. Of course, the Longhorns have no chance at getting Urban Meyer, which was probably never going to happen to begin with. But I think he'd do good in pros. College, he kind of has a little bit of a track record of kind of leaving these programs a little broken with some of the players that he recruits, besides the Utah Utes back in the day. But you look at Florida, you look at Ohio State, one of the teams, you have a bunch of players that, Aaron Hernandez and different guys that kind of break the laws here and there, break the rules. And then Ohio State, you have the suspension that they got, and that's kind of how he left the team. So who knows? Maybe the pros is kind of a good route for him to go if he does want to try this again.
Yeah. To me, honestly, the Jacksonville job is probably the most attractive. Not only did they just recently solidify themselves as the number one pick in next year's draft, it was quite funny actually. Jags fans were cheering for the Bears to score the go-ahead touchdown in their game this past weekend. That's a fan base that knew what was on the line, and they knew that they didn't want to win. But aside from just having the number one overall pick, the Jacksonville Jaguars have 11 total picks coming in the 2021 draft, and an estimated $100 million in cap space. So the Jags are the best position for a quick reload and a quick turnaround in this whole rebuild. So landing a franchise-changing quarterback like Trevor Lawrence and then being able to build around him in that same draft with a bunch of young talent, plug in a coach like an Urban Meyer, like a Dabo Sweeney with a new GM. Oh man, that's a GM's wet dream come true right there. You have all these assets and all these tools, plus you get a marquee coach in there at the same time. That's a recipe for success.
Every year there's always, every year there's always a handful of quarterbacks that are kind of talked about in the first and star who he's the guy this year. There's not any question about it. He's the guy. And like you said, the fact that they were so talented last year, they shouldn't have to reload that much. I mean, they could trade away picks. They can, get up there early in the rounds, and they can really, take a one-win team and make them a contender the following year, which is unheard of. The Jets, why in the world the Jets had to go and win? They just threw away their quarterback. I don't understand it, but I guess I can't speak much. I'm wanting to think that my Falcons missed that last second field goal to get a top 5 pick. At least that's what I'm telling myself. But at this point, if you've only won one game, what's the purpose of winning? So I think Jacksonville, that job opening is beautiful at this point. It don't get no better.
Yeah, I'm throwing my hat in the ring on that one too. If Shad Khan's listening, which I know he is, I know he's a big fan of the Nest podcast. Give me a call. I'll come and be the head coach of the Jacksonville Jags next season, and we'll see what I can do with the team. Well, let's talk a little bit about the Week 16 results. We had a pretty awesome week of football that started on Christmas Day and carried in all throughout the weekend. I'm really enjoying having these Saturday and Sundays with NFL action going on. But Alvin Kamara kicked off the weekend by stealing the entire freaking show. Dude went out there for the New Orleans Saints, and he was running wild all over the Vikings defense to the tune of 6 rushing touchdowns. Pretty much him and his red cleats stole the show on Christmas. Everybody's been talking about it. He's now 68 yards shy of 1,000 yards on the season. He'll probably get that pretty easily next week against the Panthers. But lost in all this excitement was the fact that Drew Brees looks very average. He threw for 311 yards, but he had 0 touchdowns and threw for 2 interceptions. Are the Saints in trouble come playoff time? Because you can't depend on 6 touchdowns a game from Kamara.
Drew Brees is Drew Brees, man. He's going to show up when it counts. When it comes to playoff time, I don't think, if I'm the Saints, I wouldn't worry not one bit about having Drew Brees as my quarterback. It don't hurt that Kamara can run for 6 touchdowns. I mean, the only thing I can think of is every time he scored, I cuss out Butch Jones because I'm like, look what we could have had we had a coach that knew what he had.
Absolutely.
But I think Drew Brees is going to be just fine, man. The Hall of Fame quarterbacks, they come to play in the playoffs, so I think we'll see a different Drew Brees.
Adam, how do you feel about it?
Yeah, just to kind of follow up on Justin's point, I agree. I think it's Drew Brees. He just needs to manage the game. Just don't throw it away. The 2 picks look like an eyesore, but when your running back puts up 6 touchdowns, you can get away with that kind of thing. And I think they'll be okay. I don't see them getting to the Super Bowl, but they'll definitely be a big contender for it. And they need Drew Brees out there. Taysom Hill, he's not bad, but the team just operated differently without him. And I think in order to succeed and follow the game plan that they're designed to run, you need someone like Drew Brees out there under center.
And let's not forget that. I'll just say real quick, let's not forget that those 6 touchdowns happened because the team has to respect Drew Brees regardless of how he's playing. So if they don't respect him and they don't have, the coverage they got out there, those holes ain't open and those 6 touchdowns ain't happening.
Yeah, I guess maybe, but I'm kind of leaning the other way, and I feel like Drew Brees he's showing his age a lot more. And after coming back from that injury where he had 11 fractures in his ribs and had a punctured lung, he just hasn't really looked like he's that comfortable back there. And I think going into the playoffs, the Saints are actually in a worse spot than maybe somebody like the Bucks. They've also put on a bit of a holiday clinic this week. Tom Brady went out there and he looked like he was 32 instead of 42. He went out there and had the absolute best half of his entire career, threw for 348 yards, 4 touchdowns, and 0 interceptions, spreading the ball around. Oh, and by the way, they did it without Ronald Jones. They did it with a limited Fournette. He was out there just throwing the ball. Evans was open. Gronk was open. Antonio Brown was open. He was showing love to all of his wide receivers, and he was out there balling. If this team is healthy and they get a healthy, rested Ronald Jones back, I think the Bucks are more of a problem than the Saints come playoff time.
I think it just depends. I mean, I agree with what you're saying, but this is the NFL. It's any given Sunday. every week you're 0-0 pretty much, especially in the playoffs. And I think they'll be okay with Drew Brees. Tom Brady looks good right now, but we also can't forget how he looks. It's almost like a back and forth kind of thing with Tom Brady. We were saying watch out for the Steelers for 14 weeks, and now the Steelers are, a top, or potentially going to fall off the top of it. So it just depends. But even the Chiefs right now, losing last week doesn't really look. Oh, did we lose Justin?
Yeah, it looks like it. But go ahead, continue.
But it's kind of like I'm saying, it's any given Sunday. Each week is a new week, and you can build on previous momentum, but I feel like it can shift week in and week out depending on how the players play and who shows up. And especially with the COVID situation going on, who knows if some of these players get sick later into the year going into the playoffs and they have to miss because of the COVID-19 list.
Yeah, that's true, and that's something that we'll get into later. The COVID affecting the outcomes of games and stuff like that. But the Bucks have had their fair share of dealing with guys on and off the COVID list. Ronald Jones, for example, he was recently on there, but I think just altogether they have more pieces. And with Mike Thomas not really playing this year, he's been banged up. They say that he'll be back in time for the playoffs. We'll see. Drew Brees being banged up, I don't think he's operating on full cylinder right now. I think the Bucks are the better team right now, but of course, we know all paths to the Super Bowl in the NFC at least are going to have to go through the frozen tundra there in Green Bay. And Rodgers may be the MVP of the league this season, but Adams is the most valuable Packer.
Absolutely. That team is on a different level when Adams is out there, split out wide.
Yeah, dude, that guy on Sunday Night Football looked like the best player in the entire league. I thought that this game for sure was going to be a shootout from the opening kickoff to the very end. The Packers pretty much put that out of everyone's mind in the first quarter by jumping up early and being able to contain Derrick Henry, which is something I didn't really see their run defense being able to do. But Rodgers to Adams, man, that has become such a familiar sight for Packers fans. And they linked up for a trio of touchdowns and 142 yards. Dude, if they're playing like that, I don't know who's going to stop them. With the defense actually showing up. Yeah, Jerome's commenting along and saying the defense actually showed up. If their defense plays like that and their offense can get clicking like it was in that game, lost in a lot of this stuff is the fact that Aaron Jones is 1,000-yard rusher this season. A lot of people don't even really give him the credit that he deserves, but he's been back there shouldering a lot of these first downs so that Adams can get open downfield. They have to respect that run so he can be open. They look like a great pick to at least go to the Super Bowl, in my opinion.
And they look like, that potential Super Bowl winning formula, what they have. You said the 1,000-yard rusher, 1,000-yard receiver, and you have someone like Aaron Rodgers back there. Kind of like what Jerome's saying, the defense showing up. I think that's a really big thing that's kind of been their Achilles heel in the past is the defense can't really hang and keep them in games. And, I think they're kind of like what we were saying. The Bucs look dangerous, and we're not sure about Drew Brees, but I think the Packers are potentially going to be the favorite to go to the Super Bowl for the NFC.
Yep, I agree. And I know Jerome's a big Packers fan, so he's probably pretty excited to hear me say that. So, and Aaron can run now. Yeah, this is the second time in his career he's busted 1,000 yards rushing. So, and you're talking about Rodgers being able to run. He's always been mobile in the pocket, but he has been able to be a little bit more elusive this season because defenses are respecting his downfield game. They're respecting Aaron Jones a lot, so they're able to utilize him a little bit more with his feet. I have talked a lot of shit about him in the past, so it is what it is. Hey, I'm coming around. I'm seeing that he's actually doing well this season. More so than just all the Packers fans blowing smoke every year. Because a lot of times you guys are saying he's the greatest when he's just putting up average stats. This is one of his top 3 best seasons of his career, and his other 2 he won the MVP. I think he wins MVP again this year too. But the game of the week has to be the Dolphins and the Raiders. That game was epic on so many proportions. The holiday season is a time when people tend to look and see magic everywhere they look. You know, the Christmas magic here, the holiday magic over here, the Santa Claus coming down the chimney and magically delivering toys all around the world, blah, blah, blah. Well, the real magic was Fitz magic, because when he came into that game, things changed. You know, Tua was a great starter, but Fitz came in and he was the closer. And I don't know what else to say except for Fitz magic finally, happened again, and it was a great game to watch. Myles Gaskins went off in that game too. Dude, coming off of his COVID injury and all that, or COVID IR or whatever he was on, COVID reserve list, came back. He looked like he hasn't missed a beat. He didn't start the game as a running back one, but he finished the game as the running back one. Dude's unreal.
He looks, I mean, yeah, you're right with that. Tagovailoa, he's a good quarterback, but we either get Fitz magic or Fitz tragic, and Fitz magic showed up. And I mean, he did suit up for the Texans for a while, and I was a fan of him there too, but he just always kind of has this, this trick up his sleeve in certain games. And even in certain games he doesn't perform well, he just gives your team a chance that some quarterbacks just don't really give your team the opportunity for. And speaking of the Dolphins, it's pretty interesting that the Texans were going to have the 3rd overall pick, but because of the trades they made, the Dolphins actually have the 3rd overall pick in this coming draft. So that's going to be interesting to watch too.
So here we have a team that's sitting at 10-4, 11-4, whatever they are now, and they're also going to end up with the 3rd overall pick, so they can just continue to add to that roster that's already ahead of schedule. That defense is the number 1 defense in the league this year. The offense is starting to get the pieces together. I think, Tua with a little bit more experience, a little more confidence, maybe trusting his receivers and stuff a little bit more, he could live up to that number 5th overall draft pick. Dolphins are something to be, worried about in the AFC East.
I had the Dolphins as my fantasy defense this year, and shout out to my boy Eric Rowe, playing a cornerback safety for the Dolphins, really showing up this year. And it's awesome seeing him succeed and seeing how well that defense is playing as a unit.
Yeah, absolutely. I was on the edge of my seat pretty much the entire game because I had a lot of Dolphins on my fantasy squad. So I was sitting there like, okay, I got Gesicki, I got Gaskin, I got the kicker. So I was just ready, amped and ready the entire game. And every time they were scoring, I was checking my fantasy. And I was like, oh yeah, because of course I was in the championship this week, so I was definitely on it. And I hope
you weren't just in it. You're about to be the champ.
It's over. It's over.
Yeah.
I won it. I took a knee with my defense. I didn't even have to play them. So, yeah, and I hope Justin comes back on, because I was playing Justin this week. But yeah, I was all in it, and that game put me up 80 points or whatever early, so I thought I was going to cruise to the ship, but things got a little bit rocky, and I thought I was going to lose it for a while. It wasn't until Devontae Adams came along that I actually
there was a lot of back and forth. I was, I didn't really set my lineup and didn't really pay attention because I, got out, but I checked every other hour and I felt like it was back and forth. And I'm like, this is a good week. If we don't have, a huge blowout either way, it's pretty good to watch.
It did make for a pretty fun and competitive championship. And we even texted about it during the matchup on Sunday. And we both agreed that either way, at least we're both in it and nobody got blown out. And it wasn't like, oh, okay, that was pretty much a dull championship. It was back and forth, and it was a nail biter down into the last minute of the Sunday night football game. And then when I got to pull my defense last night after the game and just, make that spot go empty and then see the little projection go from 98% to 100% because I knew I wouldn't lose any points. It was like, yes.
Smart on your part.
I got it, baby. Send me that belt, Garth. I'm ready for it.
Hey, congratulations, man.
Thank you, buddy. But I survived that championship round. I survived the entire playoffs because, with that my first round game against Zach, it was a nail biter. And then my second round against Harvey, it was back and forth, back and forth. He was projected to win pretty much all day until the last minute. My defense actually saved me in that one, and his defense let him down. And then, again in the championship, it was a close matchup. I survived, and Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs survived. They survived the Atlanta Falcons of all teams this week. And I'm hoping that Justin comes back on because he's a Falcons fan and he could give us a little more thoughts on this. He alluded to it earlier whenever they missed the field goal. But
I'd like to hear from Justin too about it. I mean, they're the 4th overall pick in the draft, so I want to kind of hear, is Matt Ryan going to stick around? I mean, what does he want to see happen with that franchise?
Yeah, I don't know. He just texted me and said his phone's at 6% battery and he's not going to be able to get back on. So it is what it is. Maybe he'll comment along or something like that. But yeah, I don't know what the Falcons are going to be doing. I think they definitely need help on defense.
Yep.
If I'm the Falcons, that's who I try to draft. I actually try to find a defensive-minded coach for them to go the rest of the way because they've got a great offense. They can put points on the board. They just have a hard time stopping other people from putting just as many, if not more.
Absolutely.
Especially late in games. So I think they need to find some defensive help. So I would probably look for the best defensive end, defensive lineman, safety, whatever is the best available defensive player out there. That's who I would take at number 4. But going into this game, it was back and forth, and the Falcons actually had a pretty good shot at beating the Chiefs. And Zach texted our group thread, and he was like, "How did the Chiefs barely get past the Falcons?" And I commented and said, "Because the Chiefs are overrated." What do you think? Do you think the Chiefs are the team to beat, or do you think that they've just been able to slide by all season?
I think they've kind of so they're a tale of two teams almost. For about the first half of the year, they kind of came out guns a-blazing, and even in the second half, they've had some games in the same situation where they can throw up on anybody. But they do kind of seem to have that tendency where they're just sliding by certain games and almost playing to the level of their competition. And I think that's going to be a danger for them heading into the postseason when you have teams like Josh Allen and the Bills, and I mean, not even really the Steelers anymore, but mainly the Bills. I think that's the team they got to watch out for. But I do agree. I think the Chiefs are not the team to beat. I think that they are very beatable. They just are very fortunate that they just played the Falcons.
Yep. I agree, but ultimately the man himself, Ric Flair, said to be the man, you've got to beat the man. And so far, they've put up a pretty impressive record of 14-1. So no one's really been able to beat them yet. I think the Bills might be the team to do it. I agree with that. My prediction is that it's Bills and Packers in the Super Bowl, but we'll see. We'll see in a couple weeks how that all unfolds. You're a Seahawks fan. Do you remember a few weeks back? Well, it's been a couple months at this point, but DK Metcalf had to chase down a
defensive player off the pick six, potential pick six.
And he tracked him down, and he caught him, yards from the end zone. Back then, a reporter asked Tyreek Hill, hey, did you see that play that DK made? And he was like, yeah, it was great. He's like, do you think that you could run a guy down and tackle him like that? He said, I'd never have to do that because Patrick doesn't throw interceptions. Well, on Sunday, Tyreek Hill had to make the exact same play. So he needs to learn how to watch what he's saying because his words are coming back to haunt him. And Patrick Mahomes has been throwing quite a few interceptions lately. He's thrown 4 picks in the last 3 games.
I like Pat Mahomes. I like I like, he's got a good head on his shoulders. He comes off very humble, although his teammates like Tyreek Hill do not. But as much as I might come off as public enemy number one, he is a great quarterback. Don't get me wrong. He'll probably be Hall of Fame. I mean, let's be honest. But he is very fortunate to be drafted to the team that he went to, with a coach like Andy Reid, with the track stars that he has on that team. Whereas, Russell Wilson didn't really have that luxury. He had a great defense, but besides DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, he's never really had that great of receivers that, are to the same level as a Tyreek Hill and everyone else, like Travis Kelce. So for him to kind of make that comparison to Russell Wilson is a little unfair. Of course, I'm biased. I'm a Seahawks fan, but I would still take Russell Wilson over Patrick Mahomes, depending on, whatever situation they're in. But I just, I just think Pat Mahomes is a little fortunate to where he was drafted to, and he's given a lot more credit than he deserves, if that makes any kind of sense. And I know people are probably going to think I'm crazy for making that statement, but that's just, my own opinion on that.
No, I don't think you're too far off, honestly, because, guys like Joe Burrow, imagine if he was drafted to be the quarterback of
the Cowboys,
and then Dak Prescott got injured like he did this season. You would see Joe Burrow out there absolutely balling right now. Probably wouldn't be laid up injured with an ACL injury and all that stuff, because the Cowboys have been able to protect Andy Dalton. They're able to actually, do fairly well. So I think there's a lot to that. And, the Saints almost drafted Pat Mahomes. They wanted to draft Patrick Mahomes. Sean Payton said that he was probably one of the most impressive scouts that he had ever seen whenever he was being scouted to come play football. So I think there, he did get lucky in a sense that he got to go there, but he was looked at to go to a lot of these good teams. And I think he's one of those guys that he would have been fine no matter where he goes.
And I agree with that. I mean, but it's, I think personally, wherever you're drafted makes a huge difference on how you come up. I mean, look at Deshaun Watson, for example. Imagine if Deshaun Watson was picked by the Chiefs. I think we might be talking about Deshaun Watson being the best quarterback ever compared to Patrick Mahomes. It's just, I think there's a lot of similarities between them, and Deshaun Watson's an obvious winner too. But it really depends on which team picks you up.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree with that, but Mahomes is with the Chiefs and he signed pretty much a lifetime deal there, so that's where he's most likely going to retire, and could possibly go into Canton with a Chiefs logo on his bust. So,
well, he's a KC guy, and I mean, he looks great in that red, so why not, don't fix something that's not broken. So,
yeah, speaking of broken, the NFL system is most definitely broken, and the NFL screwed the Browns. That's something that pretty much every fan of NFL football has been able to agree on this week, is that the Browns got screwed. And, why is it that certain teams seem to be getting preferential treatment from the league when other teams are forced, almost with a gun against their head to go out there week in and week out and not miss a game? Because if, we were just talking about, if the Chiefs, for whatever reason, came and said, hey, all of our wide receivers can't play, we have to activate guys from the practice squad on Saturday to play in a Sunday game, the NFL would jump through hoops. They would move games to Monday. They would move games to Wednesday. They would move games to 6 weeks from now just to make sure that all of those players could come back for Patrick Mahomes. But whenever it's the Browns and Baker Mayfield, they decide, nah, y'all can just play with your practice squad scrubs.
I mean, I could say the same thing with the Broncos. They made the Broncos play an entire game without a legitimate starting quarterback.
The difference in that situation is that the Broncos quarterbacks all went out and broke COVID protocol. As far as it's being reported, the Browns wide receivers did not. They all adhered to the protocol of the league, and they still ended up getting in contact or testing positive or whatever the case was. So in that instance, the reason that the Broncos had to go out there and play like that is because they did it to themselves.
I see what you mean. And I do agree with James. I do think that a lot of this depends on who's bringing more viewers, who's going to put more money in the pockets of the shareholders. And I mean, it's a business at the end of the day. It's just how it's going to be run. So it's unfortunate, but they are the Browns.
Yeah. And, Zach coined a term a few years ago that the Browns are always going to Browns themselves. And, they didn't Browns themselves this year, but the league Browns them. And that sucks because it seems like the refs and the league definitely had their sway in a lot of games this week. And the refs are getting thrown under the bus this week for a lot of their blunders. I don't know how many of those that you caught, but I know I saw some bad calls in week 16. The Jalen Hurts fumble. We've been pretty high on Jalen Hurts on this show. We've talked a lot about his accolades, and he fumbled against the Dallas Cowboys this week, and it pretty much cost them the game. But if you go back and look at the images and the slow-mo of the fumble itself, both of his knees were on the ground and the ball was still tucked against his body before it came loose. Somehow that was ruled a fumble and recovered by the Cowboys, and the Cowboys went on to win the game. I don't know, whatever. And then, you in the Packer-Titans game, you had Aaron Jones stepping out of bounds and then being able to run the ball another 40 yards downfield with a ref standing there watching his feet, seeing it all happen, and was like, whatever. And then they also had the horrendous offsides call on the blocked field goal that wasn't offsides at all. So to me, we're looking at Refgate 2020 right now.
That's every year, though. I mean, the refs always, depending on what team you're rooting for, the refs are always going to be at fault. I didn't see the Jalen Hurts fumble. Unfortunately, I wasn't really paying attention to that game compared to a couple other games. I don't care about the Cowboys coming from Houston, but I mean, the refs suck, man. It still mind boggles me that we have all this instant replay. We have all the tools right there for us to, make the best view decision, and human error still finds a way to screw teams over. It's insane. It happens in college football. It happens in every sport.
Yeah, it does. Jerome saying NBA Refgate. Yeah, it does happen in every sport. This Facebook user is Ryan Johnston, and he's been saying that it actually was a fumble. He thinks that the ball was out, loose or whatever before his knees hit the ground. But he did say that the refs call plays to who is paying them more, and it does seem that is the case. Because we see a lot of calls for these teams that are winning that always seem to go their way, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Funny how that works.
Well, the rules change in the way that they call certain. I mean, even the catch rule now it's kind of different. I mean, going all the way back to Des Bryant and the Packers. I mean, I think if you go to the ground and the ball doesn't hit the ground and you catch it, that should be a catch. I think a lot of this bobbling and everything, unless the ball touches the ground, I think it should. I mean, that's how I played it my entire life. And all of a sudden they're trying to discredit certain catches that I think should be warranted an actual catch. We saw it with the Saints and the Vikings with the whole pass interference, and there's a lot of these calls where I don't know, it's unforgivable at that point. And I didn't see the fumble with Jalen Hurts, but I mean, it's some of these refs. It's same with UFC judging too. I mean, it's pathetic to see how some of these people have these jobs.
Yeah, it makes you think like, oh, I could do that because I can watch from my couch and it looks like I can make the calls a lot better, especially with baseball for me. But, while we're talking about Jalen Hurts and the Cowboys, it's a good time to mention that the NFC East is still up for grabs. This is a division that, I think a lot of people had pretty much given up on midway through the season. And now here we are coming into week 17, and it's a pretty contested division. I'm going to go over it a lot tomorrow night in my live on NFL Trash Talk 2020 group page about how all the clinching scenarios for the NFC East, for the AFC South, and a lot of these other divisions that are pretty too close to call right now. But man, the NFC East, like the Cowboys still have a shot to win the division. They've got to have a few things go their way, but they could still do it. Cowboys got this. We got some Cowboys fans in here.
Honestly, I think that when it comes to the playoffs, if they're going to change anything at all, kind of like how college football has changed the way they run the championships, it's ridiculous that you can have these really, really bad teams still potentially get into the playoffs to play against other really good teams. And you have a lot of other really good teams that unfortunately are stuck in very tough divisions and don't get that opportunity. It's kind of ridiculous to me. I think there needs to be some kind of criteria you need to meet in order to make it to the playoffs, not just win your division. But I mean, like the Cardinals, they could be a potentially good team in the playoffs. I mean, anybody from the NFC West could be in the playoffs at this point. Not the 49ers, but the other three can.
Yeah,
rewind that real quick.
49ers are all but out of it, but this game eliminated the Eagles.
And go back. Let me see this. That's close.
To me, it looks like he's down. To me,
it looks. Go back to pause it right when. Okay, here, just go ahead and play it. Stop. Both knees are up. I mean, that.
To me, it looks like he has control of the ball still.
It does.
So I don't know.
You can see that it's starting to come out a little bit, but it's still. I don't know. I don't think there's enough conclusive evidence to call that a fumble.
But it was called a fumble on the field. So is there enough
to overturn it?
Overturn it. That's the thing, and that's
ridiculous.
But to me, it didn't look like a fumble. To me, it looked like he was down. But I respect, anybody's opinion that disagrees. So it is what it is. The refs ruled it as a fumble. I think it's Refgate 2020 trying to give the Cowboys a chance, but it is what it is. And while we're talking about the NFC East and the chances, all these chances depend on the Washington football team losing. If the Washington football team wins in week 17, somehow, some way they win the division in spite of everything that has gone on. And the Washington football team just today announced a little bit more drama because they had to outright release their 15th overall pick in the 2019 draft, Dwayne Haskins. So he's
really
no longer a member of the Washington football team. This has been quite the week for that young man.
So I'm late to this. What happened with that?
So you heard about him going out and celebrating the loss to the Seahawks in the strip clubs, right?
I did hear about that.
That was his second violation of the COVID protocol. So he was fined and he was stripped of his captain's badge on his uniform or whatever. And then he was replaced in the third quarter of their game this past Sunday. And after the game, he stormed off, didn't talk to media, didn't, alert the team that he was even leaving. He just left. And Ron Rivera was like, well, I don't know what to do or whatever. And then today, was it Schefter? I can't remember which one it was, but one of the NFL insiders broke the news that he had been officially released from the Washington football team.
I mean, some of these players depend. You can be the best, most athletic guy on the team, but if you behave like a punk and you're going to behave that way in a professional world, then there's always next man up. There's always someone else out there that's going to do a better job. And ultimately, even as a quarterback, even if you're good, if you're going to, be a threat to the team and not, help lead a cohesive unit, then why, what good are you to the team? So I can see that. But I didn't hear about that. I was in the woods with that. I had no idea.
Yeah. I'll send you a link to it after the show so that you can kind of read about it a little bit. But all season long, Zach and I have been talking about our fantasy booms and busts for each particular week. And this week, being that it was the championship round, these are even more significant booms and busts. So, Adam, let's talk about the week 16 booms in fantasy football for the week. I'll give you a second to look if you want to look at your phone or whatever it is that you need to look at. But for me, my quarterback boom of the week has to be Tom Brady. Dude only played a single half, and he put up more points than any other quarterback out there. He had 29.92 points. If he would have played the whole game, he could have broke 45. Tom threw for 348 yards, and he had 4 touchdowns. Like I said, about the during the first half versus those Lions. And running backs, obviously Alvin Kamara is the biggest boom of all booms with 56.2 points, but Myles Gaskin was the biggest boom for me with 33.9 points. Coming off of his COVID reserve, he had 169 scrimmage yards and 2 total touchdowns. I loved it. Absolutely loved that game. I loved everything about it. And then again, wide receiver Devontae Adams dropping 43.2 on Sunday Night Football, 142 yards receiving, 3 total touchdowns, and winning me a fantasy football championship. Definitely booming for the week.
I'll piggyback off what you're saying. I mean, I pretty much agree. You benched Gaskin. So I wasn't in the championship, so I didn't really, set my lineup. But, a guy that went off on my bench, that'll be my receiver for the week, although he scored 3 points less than your guy, Devontae Adams. Congratulations, Mike Evans. You finally came out and you did something. I wish it could have been earlier, but, he looked great out there. 10 receptions, 181 yards. I mean, 2 touchdowns. He looked awesome out there. Same thing. Myles Gaskin looked awesome. Tom Brady, Deshaun Watson put up good numbers. Big Ben, kind of had somewhat of a comeback and did decent as well, but he's still Big Ben. But I don't know. I mean, congratulations. I'm happy for you. Better luck next year to me. I'm never drafting Christian McCaffrey ever again.
Yeah, that one bit you real hard. You had the number 1 pick in our draft, and it ultimately blew up in your face. But the number 2 pick, Saquon Barkley, also was a bust. Zeke was a top 5 pick. He was a bust. So
I was this close to getting Kamara. I picked up Kamara his rookie year just off waivers, and he got me to the championship in whatever league I was in. So I've always kind of had that loyalty towards him. I even considered buying a Kamara jersey just because it's like, wow, I like black and gold. I don't really care for the Saints, but this guy got me to the ship, and I should have gone with him. But hindsight's 2020. So
you listen to all the talking heads and all the fantasy experts out there that said CMC is the way to go. CMC is the best out there. CMC is going to get you to a championship. And then, obviously nobody can predict injuries, but
they get a lot of shit wrong. Matthew Berry and Field Yates and them, they do their homework, but there's a lot of times when they make very bold predictions and they're not right.
Yep, I agree. And that leads us to talking about the busts. And every week, there are those great players that boom, and then there are those great players that bust. And for me, one of the biggest busts of the week was Drew Brees. Drew posted 8.14 points. Yeah, he threw for 311 yards, but those 2 interceptions and 0 touchdowns really hurt his fantasy score.
That's your bust for the week?
That's my bust quarterback for the week, yeah.
Bust quarterback for me. I mean, who can I say for that?
Ouch. Kat Harris-Plank had CMC as her first pick. And in fact, her first 3 were CMC, Kittle, and Julio Jones. all 3 have been injured.
Jeez.
That is a nightmare. And she still made it to her league championship. So kudos to her for being able to manage that.
I mean, bust for me. I mean, against the Jets, I can say Baker Mayfield putting up 8 points. He's been looking really good as of late. And then, you play the Jets and you lose to the Jets and you don't even put up double digits. I mean,
but again, he was playing with practice squad wide receivers that he didn't even have a chance to practice with before the game. They were activated on Saturday for a 1 p.m. game on Sunday.
And that's if I have to pick someone, but it's
that's kind of a hard one. I give Baker a pass on that one. My bust running back has to be Le'Veon Bell. Dude posted 4.9 points. He had 30 yards rushing and 1 catch for 9 yards. He should have taken over as the featured back in Kansas City with Clyde Edwards-Helaire being out injured. Instead, he just regressed into the Jets version of Le'Veon Bell. He basically just sucked it up, and he was terrible.
No, I agree with that. I guess for me, I'm going to have to go with Detroit's Swift. My entire fantasy.
Our entire team was a Week 16 bust.
Jeez. Yeah, I'm going to say Swift with the Detroit Lions. Fumble 45 yards, only 9 points after doing pretty well throughout the year. I know there's others out there, but, I'm sure there are people out there. Didn't really put up, the kind of points that he's expected to do. But I don't know, points-wise this week, I didn't really pay attention to a whole lot, just a couple of people because I, had nothing to win at this point. I just kind of, for once, got to enjoy the games just as the games. But, yeah, I'm glad I didn't have to set a lineup because I would have lost regardless.
My last bust for the week is wide receiver. And I almost don't want to put him as a bust because of him, it led to me winning a championship. And that's Corey Davis of the Tennessee Titans. He posted a goose egg for Justin in his flex position. He had 0 catches for 0 yards, obviously. He had a handful of targets, but he was pretty much blanketed and shut down the entire game. He didn't even have his name called until the 3rd quarter. And this is a dude that had been stepping up pretty big all season long. And for him to post a goose egg in the championship rounds, that was huge.
Yeah, I agree with that. Another one I could, I'm going to say Brandon Ayuk, who I had in my flex, didn't start him, but he'd been doing great all year for me when I picked him up on waivers. And this past week, 1 reception for 15 yards and a win against the Cardinals. So that, that's not good either, but I wish my fantasy was over another week of agony.
Yeah, so some leagues have a 2-week championship, and I guess it's cumulative scores for the 2 weeks or whatever, and then that determines the championship, which is interesting because I hate playing championships on week 17.
That's a very soccer thing to do.
I hate playing on week 17 because a lot of these stars that you depend on to give your team those points, they get rested in week 17, especially if they're not getting that bye week. And this year there's only, 1 team per league getting a bye. So you might see a lot of these guys, not play in week 17. And then you're sitting there trying to waiver wire for a championship. And that's a little bit tough.
I agree.
But Adam, I know you stay up to date on a lot of things that are, outside of the sports realm as well. So what's been going on with you that you would want to talk about?
So John Kavanaugh, Conor McGregor's coach, came out and made the suggestion that he thinks that whoever wins between Dustin and Conor should get the belt. And Khabib thinks that's where they're going to head with it too. A lot of people on Twitter are very upset about it, saying, it should be between Justin and Dustin, which I can see that argument as well. But I mean, it's a money sport, and a lot of people ultimately want to see Conor fight for a championship. And we're in the state right now where if it's not a championship fight for a lot of these pay-per-views, a lot of people don't buy it. But when you put a belt at the title, it's going to sell a lot more seats. So I think it makes sense. Either one of those two within the next year would definitely compete for a championship for the lightweight division. And I think whoever wins that should get the belt unless Habib decided to gets the blessing from his mother and he came back, which I don't think is going to happen. But the winner of Dustin and Justin get the belt. And then the winner of that, I think, should get Justin Gaethje.
Okay, so the winner of Conor and
Conor and Dustin, yeah.
And I don't know, man. Just making that fight for the belt just seems a little bit rushed or premature, in my opinion. Conor hasn't fought in a year at this point. He hasn't fought since he fought Cowboy
last January.
So I don't think strapping a belt on him right away is necessarily the best idea, or at least putting him directly in a title fight. I would like to see this fight between Dustin and Conor be the number one contender matchup, so to say, and then they go on to fight Gaethje.
I could see that too.
Gaethje was the interim champ going into the fight against Habib. He lost against Habib, obviously, very, very decidedly, but he was still at the top of the mountain beside Habib when that all went down. So I think he should be, I guess the general consensus number one contender still.
It's hard because MMA, you always want to do some type of MMA math, and which really doesn't work. And so I can argue that Gaethje beat a Tony Ferguson that isn't the same Tony Ferguson that we all knew and loved. Tony does not look great anymore. Maybe he can bounce back from it, but he just does not look as dangerous as he did on his win streak before
Very true.
blowing out with his knees. And then Justin went in there and got completely pummeled by Habib, which everyone gets completely pummeled by Habib except for Al Quinta somehow. But, that's the tough thing with the sport is when you have a champion that's really young and they walk away, you have to do something with the belt. And unless Habib gets this blessing from his mom or there's a fight that entices him with GSP, we may not see him fight again, which even then, the GSP fight doesn't make sense to me. And I'm honestly tired of seeing a lot of these super fights. I wish these fighters would stay in their division or just vacate your belt and leave. Like talk of John Jones going up to heavyweight and then Adesanya going up to, light heavyweight. And it's just stay in your lane, man. Just fight. And let's see these great fighters, run their divisions for 10 years. I want to see another Spider Silva or another GSP. I want to see, or Jose Aldo. I want to see long reigning champs. And, instead of having everybody jump around to these different divisions.
Yeah, I really do think that Conor McGregor jumping around to weight classes and stuff like that sparked that trend of everybody wanting to be a 2-division champ and proving that they're the baddest at, whatever weights they can get to. It does kind of suck because the UFC used to be, you would own your division. You were content with, hey, this is my division. Nobody can take it from me. Nowadays, people will win a division and then try to move up to a new division and forget all about the one below. Mm-hmm. To her credit, Amanda Nunes has at least defended her belt at both divisions. So, I haven't seen her much lately, so I don't know what her plans are going forward, but she at least defended those belts.
I agree with that. Yeah, the latest I've seen with Amanda Nunes is that Dana White said he would sick her on Jake Paul if necessary. That would be hilarious. What do you think about that whole situation with Jake Paul?
Oh man, it's been a wild one. I know Ben Askren publicly accepted a fight against him on his Twitter page or whatever, and since then it's been all quiet on the Jake Paul front. So I don't know if that means he's backing out or, in Askren's word, being a coward. But I don't think that was the fight that Jake Paul wanted. He wanted the money fight with McGregor, or he wanted a big name fight. And then when Ben Askren stepped up and said, I'll fight you, I don't care, he was like, crap, now I've got a UFC guy that actually wants to fight me. This sucks.
What's funny is what I never thought I would say this, and I could be wrong according to some. Yeah, Jake Paul does seem like a bitch. In a fight scenario between Ben Askren and Jake Paul, it almost seems like Jake Paul would have more to lose than Ben Askren if you think about a boxing match.
Absolutely, he does. Ben Askren's a retired fighter. He's been a champion all over the place. Like, you would think if he gets beat up by a YouTuber, then that's pretty embarrassing for him. But I don't think he cares about that. Jake Paul cares about his 2-0. He cares about his, oh, I'm knocking everybody out. I'm a bad man. But if he goes out there and gets worked by Ben Askren, who's known as a wrestler, then it's like, okay, all of your credibility is gone. You're just a celebrity boxer that happened to have a few flashy finishes.
Right. Yeah, but I think right now in the UFC, the most exciting division has got to be the welterweight division with Masvidal, Kobe Covington, Kamaru Usman. It's just there's a lot of really top contenders in there that I still want to see Covington and Usman too. I think that'd be a great fight. It was a very Rocky Balboa-ish kind of fight the first time they fought for the belt, and that's something I like to see. There's a lot of good fighters in that division, but some of the other divisions are just not as they're just not as premier as that one division, although they're all good. But that's what I'm really looking forward to in 2021. Are there any big fights that you're looking to maybe see this upcoming year?
Oh man, I'm not real sure. I really like Peter Yan. I like watching that dude fight. I think he's a barbarian. Usman and Covington would be fun. I want to see Masvidal and Covington as well. I think that they've got bad blood there.
Mm-hmm.
Seeing Izzy move up to light heavyweight will be interesting. Jan Blachowicz is a beast, so that's going to be a fun fight, I believe. And seeing what John Jones can do if he actually gets a crack at some of these heavyweight guys. He's going to be faster, but they hit a lot harder. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I'd love to see John Jones and Stipe, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah. John Jones and Stipe is a huge money fight for sure.
Yep.
But anyway, Adam, thanks for stepping in for Zach and coming on and talking some sports with me tonight. Guys, well, first off, do you want to plug anything or give any shout outs?
I think I'm good, man. Thanks for having me on. It's always a pleasure talking to you and Zach, and kind of keeps me in check with the sports world. Kind of wish I did a little more homework when it came to fantasy, but I think I speak for a lot of us when I say as soon as you get kicked out, who cares till next year?
Yeah, pretty much. And, I did a special last week on NFL Trash Talk 2020 where I was giving people fantasy tips to prepare for that next season, because I understand a lot of people, they hang it up once they get knocked out or whatever. So it is what it is. But, there's a ton of work that you can do in the off season to make sure that your draft goes better than it did this year, because that's where a lot of people lose their entire season is in the draft. Thanks, Ryan. Appreciate that. Don't like that comment very much, but it is what it is. I'm a Pats fan, so I'm cheering for the Pats, and I'm really glad that I was able to take a knee with the Bills defense, and I don't have to sit there and, cheer against my favorite team in order to win a fantasy championship, because that's always an awkward predicament, but it is what it is. Guys, tune back in next week. Zach will be back in the studio, and he'll tell us some stories from his trip to Cleveland and maybe what some of the locals are saying about the Browns getting screwed. And let's see, I'll be on NFL Trash Talk 2020 tomorrow. And I think tomorrow I'm going to be looking at the playoff picture and kind of what your team's chances are if you're a fan of the NFC East, the AFC South, a couple of these other divisions that are out there. We'll look at some of them in detail. And next week, Zach and I will also have our good buddy Brad try to stop by so that we can talk a little bit about all the craziness that's been going on in baseball. So, guys, I appreciate you commenting along and following along. Catch us, on iTunes, Spotify, Podbean, all those good places. And if you like the shirts that I'm wearing on the show, you can find those at this link in the description. Go ahead and pick up a couple shirts. They make outstanding late Christmas gifts. So you can go ahead and grab about 12 of those and give them to all of your favorite people. We'll see you next week. Peace.